Hey guys, this video will focus on monetary policy. Now, monetary policy is one of my favorite topics in economics, so we're in for a very exciting lecture. We're going to go through 3 points, or brief points in monetary policy, before we expand on these points further in subsequent lectures. But in this video, we'll look at a brief definition of monetary policy. Secondly, we'll look at the tools used by the RBA to conduct monetary policy, and thirdly we're going to look at the RBA's charter, or the goals as to what the RBA aims to achieve by conducting monetary policy. Okay, so let's look at the definition first, and this is a very important definition to understand. So monetary policy is a branch of macroeconomic, so to do with the entire economy, macroeconomic policy operated by the RBA. So the Reserve Bank of Australia controls the implementation of monetary policy operated by the RBA and is designed to regulate aggregate demand. So like budgetary policy, it is an aggregate demand management policy. Yeah. So that's the definition of monetary policy. Monetary policy is a branch of macroeconomic policy operated by the RBA and is designed to regulate aggregate demand. So by regulating aggregate demand in the economy, of course, the RBA has to use various different tools in order to operate. So we've looked at the definition here. Now we're going to look at the tools the RBA uses to operate monetary policy. So what it uses, it heavily relies most heavily on changes in interest rate as conducted by open market market operations. And don't worry if you don't understand what open market operations is as of yet. We're going to go through that in very much detail, in a lot of detail, in further lectures. So it controls interest rates as conducted by open market operations to alter the cost, availability, and demand for money. Or in other words, credit. Okay, so that is the two major tools the RBA uses to conduct monetary policy. Is one, this changes in interest rates to alter, and how it alters the cost of credit, cost, availability, and demand for credit. And secondly, it also uses, I must note, it uses persuasion as a very minor tool to conduct monetary policy. So it tries to regulate aggregate demand in the economy by using interest rates, and as we know, interest rates relate back to this idea of money, and since money is the medium by which we buy things, this would have a very high impact on consumption expenditure and therefore aggregate demand. We'll also see how monetary policy can also in fact impact national savings and therefore investment expenditure in the future. So okay, we looked at the tools used by the RBA. Now lastly, we're going to look at the RBA's charter. Now the RBA's charter you can find on the RBA's website, but just as a brief outline, I'm not going to write this down, but I'll just outline it as from the RBA's website, so you can just go onto their website and look at the charter for yourselves. It is to ensure that the monetary and banking policy of the bank is directed towards the greatest advantage of the people of Australia, and that the powers of the bank are exercised in such a manner as will best contribute to the stability of the currency. So I'm just going to note that here. So RBA's charter. RBA's charter. All goals is firstly the stability of the currency. Stability of the currency. Secondly is the maintenance of full employment. And lastly, economic welfare and the prosperity of the Australian people. And that is a direct quote from the RBA's website. So economic prosperity and welfare. So they're the three major goals. Stability of the currency, which is also, in fact, low inflation. So we want the currency, or the value of the currency, to stay relatively stable. And so that relates back to our purchasing power, which in fact is a direct, has a direct link back to low inflation. So if our currency, or the value of the currency, remains relatively stable, then our purchasing power remains stable. And so this will mean that the nation is experiencing periods of low inflation. So the three goals are low inflation, full employment, and essentially economic prosperity, means economic growth. So as we can see, these three different goals relate to this idea of domestic economic stability. But the RBA's major goal, I should note, is low inflation. This is RBA's primary concern. It's very important to chuck in red. Primary concern. So that is the charter for the RBA to achieve domestic economic stability. But as we shall see in subsequent lectures, that the RBA's monetary policy can also affect our external stability through capital inflow and capital outflows. So welcome to the lectures. Welcome to a series of lectures on monetary policy. This will be very exciting because we've got very, very exciting analysis coming up. But to take away from this lecture, monetary policy is a branch of macroeconomic policy operated by the RBA and is designed to regulate aggregate demand. It relies most heavily on changes in interest rate as conducted by open market operations to alter the cost, availability, and demand for money or credit.